I'm Jess Thom, Biscuit. I'm an artist, a writer and a part-time superhero, Biscuit. I'm the co-founder of a company called Touretteshero, Biscuit, and we celebrate the humour and creativity of Tourettes Syndrome and share that, Biscuit, with as wide an audience as possible, Biscuit. And we also campaign for a more inclusive world, Biscuit. Hedgehog Cats! And I'm here at Unlimited to perform, Biscuit, my brand new Biscuit stand-up show, Biscuit, stand up, sit down, roll over, Biscuit Cats, Hedgehog, Biscuit. It came out of an experience when we were touring my first stage show backstage in Biscuitland, Biscuit, which was very much about a biographical show about my experiences with Tourette's and about some difficult experiences I'd had as an audience member at theatres. Biscuit, Hedgehog, Biscuit. While we were touring that show, Biscuit, we took it to a comedy festival in Wales at the start of the year, Biscuit, and the show went down really well. But afterwards, I went to see some of the comedy that evening and I had a really difficult experience, Biscuit, because comedian after comedian singled me out because of the noises I was making, Biscuit. And it got me thinking about comedy. It got me thinking about diversity, and it got me thinking about who we expect to be in our audiences, Biscuit, and how we can challenge stand-up comics to think about that differently. Biscuit, Hedgehog Cats. So that was the root of making a stand-up show. Biscuit, Hedgehog, which hopefully will be funny, Biscuit, and challenging and thought-provoking, and will definitely include biscuits and geraniums. There is a strong presence of geraniums in that show. Biscuit, Hedgehog, Biscuit. Hello, Biscuit. Hi, Biscuit, Hedgehog, Biscuit, Biscuit. So yeah, this is my Biscuit brand new Biscuit stand-up show, Biscuit, that I've written specially for this evening. That's called Stand Up, Sit Down, Roll Over, Fuck a Toaster. Okay, it's not called that. Biscuit, Hedgehog, Biscuit. I've always considered myself a creative person, Biscuit, and Biscuit, some parts of my journey as an artist have been quite traditional. Biscuit, I went to art school, Biscuit, I went to Camberwell College of Art and then to the Royal College of Art, Biscuit, and I studied drawing, Biscuit, and photography, Biscuit. My journey as a disabled person sort of was running in parallel to that, Biscuit, and in my early 20s, my tics intensified. I'd had tics as a child, but they increased, Biscuit, and were having a bigger impact on my life. Biscuit, and I increasingly found that very difficult. And for a long time, I kept my creative practice, Biscuit, and Biscuit, my disability and my impairment very separate from that, Biscuit. And then I had a conversation with my friend Matthew, Biscuit, who's my creative collaborator and the co-founder of Touretteshero, Biscuit. And he described my Tourette's as a crazy language generating machine, Biscuit, and told me not doing something creative with it would be wasteful. My tics will always have the last word, Biscuit, Biscuit, whether I like it or not. Biscuit, Hedgehog, Biscuit. The heckler I'm most worried about, Biscuit, is me, Biscuit. Get off the stage, bitch, Biscuit. At the moment, Biscuit, being a disabled person feels like a political act. Biscuit, we live in a time where, Biscuit, so many basic equalities, Biscuit, are being eroded, Biscuit, and it feels, for me as an artist, Biscuit, not incorporating that or responding to that within my work, Biscuit, feels unnatural. Biscuit, I make work about themes or about subjects that interest me, Biscuit, that come from my lived experience, Biscuit, that doesn't mean that it will always be about Tourette's or about disability, Biscuit, but it would be ridiculous for me to suggest that those things don't inform my experiences and my perspective, Biscuit. And I want to make work, Biscuit, that challenges perceptions, that challenges people to think differently. Biscuit, Hedgehog Cats, Biscuit. Certainly from my experience, Biscuit, I came to the stage, I came to performance, Biscuit, through difficult experiences as an audience member. So I find it hard to access those spaces and found that the only way for me to be able to challenge that was to create a piece of work and take to the stage. And the only seat in the house I knew I wouldn't be asked to leave. Hedgehog Cats, Aladdin. There are 3 things you need to know straight away. Biscuit, firstly, you're going to hear the words biscuit and hedgehog, Biscuit, a lot in the next hour. Cats, if I say something funny, Biscuit, you're absolutely allowed to laugh. Biscuit, in fact, Biscuit, it'll be a bit odd if you don't. Biscuit, Hedgehog. Backstage in Biscuitland also helped Biscuit promote the idea of relaxed performances, which are performances that Biscuit offer a warm invitation, Biscuit, to people who might find it difficult to follow some of the traditional biscuit, conventions of theatre etiquette, biscuit, hedgehog, biscuit, hey! Relaxed performance is really exciting to me, the movement that's happening around that, and the fact that that's being widely understood to be benefit not just disabled people, not just people who have that as an access requirement, biscuit, but that permission to relax and respond naturally, biscuit, is something that lots of people can benefit from within a theatre environment. Biscuit, disability isn't a niche issue. Biscuit, a fifth of the UK population identify as disabled. That is definitely not represented on our screens, biscuit, on our stages or in our arts institutions. And until that time, biscuit, we're going to need disability arts festivals, biscuit. And even when we might not need them, we should still definitely have them, biscuit, because they're brilliant. Biscuit, hedgehog, hats.